really comprehensive coaching architecture known as the Big Work Blueprint.
Created by Kim Skirmer, right? She's a veteran business development coach.
That's right. And looking through the material, it focuses really heavily on high-performing professionals. Specifically, the sources use financial advisors as their primary case study.
And I think this is key, the psychology and the actual systems here are incredibly universal. Like anyone can use this.
Totally. We're going to explore how anyone really can scale their business or their career without burning out. And, more importantly, without becoming completely unrecognizable to themselves in the process.
There's this quote right at the beginning of the material, and it basically serves as the anchor for the entire philosophy. It says, before the brand, before the blueprint, there is you.
Oh, I love that. Before the blueprint, there is you. So
Yeah.
we're basically deconstructing how to build a business from the inside out.
Which, if you think about it, runs completely counter to conventional business wisdom.
Right. Usually it's the exact opposite.
Yeah. Usually you're told to, find a gap in the market, build a brand to fill that gap, optimize your marketing channels, and then you just contort your own personality to fit whatever mold the algorithm or the target demographic demands.
You just become whatever the market wants you to be.
Exactly. But this architecture argues that building external systems before establishing your internal grounding is just a total recipe for collapse. The foundation of your business cannot be a marketing strategy. It has to be you.
Wow. Okay, so that brings us to the very first phase of this architecture, which the blueprint calls find the I. And the entire goal here, from what I read, is to strip away the superficial layers of your professional identity.
Right. So if you take away the vice president title, if you remove the Ivy League degree from the wall, if you strip out the daily workflow, what is left in the room, just you. And the sources emphasize a concept that I found really striking. They say, your lived experience is not background, it is data.
Okay, wait, I want to pause on that for a second. Because we are so conditioned to separate our personal baggage from our professional resumes.
Oh, 100%. Hide the personal stuff.
Right, but this is saying the exact opposite. So how do we actually use our lived experience as hard business data?
Well, you look at the friction points, the moments that challenged your core beliefs, or the specific client interactions that made you fundamentally change your process, or even the failures that taught you lessons a successful quarter never could. In traditional corporate environments, we hide those things. But in this blueprint, you actually mine them.
You mine your own history.
Yeah, that history is the raw material you use to construct a value proposition that literally no competitor can copy. Because, no competitors lived your life.
That makes so much sense. And the sources outline a specific way to mine that data, right? They call it the superpower exercise.
Yeah, the superpower exercise.
Yeah. And the premise is that you have to identify the thing you do so naturally that you've actually stopped seeing it as special. You just assume everyone can do it, so you take it for granted.
Right.
But practically speaking, and I was wondering this while reading, if I'm totally blind to my own superpower because it just feels like breathing to me, how on earth am I supposed to identify it?
It's tricky. But the trick is you have to look for what frustrates you about other people.
Wait, really? Frustration?
Yeah. Think about it. When you're watching a colleague struggle with something and you're sitting there thinking, why is this so hard for them? This is so obvious. That is usually the blinking neon arrow pointing right at your superpower.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Right. It might be complex problem synthesis or your ability to just de-escalate an angry client in seconds, or maybe just a knack for finding the missing variable in a giant spreadsheet. Because it requires zero friction for you, you assign it zero value.
You just think, oh, it's easy.
Exactly. So the exercise forces you to document those exact moments and basically reprice your own innate skills.
Reading through this section, I kept visualizing this entire dynamic as wearing a heavy, elaborate theatrical costume.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, like you go to work, you put on this velvet and armor costume of the financial advisor or the executive, and you step out onto the stage, and it looks incredible to the audience. You are performing confidence flawlessly.
It's heavy.
It's so heavy, it restricts your movement, and if you never take it off, like if you're wearing it on the commute, wearing it at the dinner table with your family, it will eventually break you down physically and mentally.
Absolutely.
And the blueprint points out that professionals become so fluent in this performance that they actually forget they're wearing a costume at all.
The velvet and armor analogy works perfectly here. because the weight of that performance is exactly what drives professional burnout. But, the objective of Find the Eye isn't to burn the costume entirely.
Right, you still have jobs to do.
Exactly. We all have social contract and professional standards to maintain. You can't just walk into a board meeting and treat it like a therapy session.
No, please don't do that.
Right. The goal is just to notice the gap, to develop the self-awareness, to know when the costume is on, and to build the actual capacity to take it off the second you step off stage.
Okay, so let's say I do the work. I find the I recognize the costume. How does having a healthier sense of self actually translate into running a profitable operation? I mean, peace of mind is wonderful, but it doesn't pay the overhead.
That is the big question, and that's where the system introduces a bridging mechanism called the CALM framework.
Colem.
Yeah, CAL is an acronym, and it's the functional bridge between your raw internal identity and the external business blueprint.
Okay, let's break down the mechanics of column, starting with C for create. The text says this means authoring your own experience rather than just reacting. What does that mean day to day?
Well, authorship is about moving from a defensive posture to an offensive one. Think about how most professionals operate. They wake up, they open their inbox, and they basically let other people's emergencies dictate their entire day.
Guilty. Yeah, I definitely do that.
We all do. They're reacting to circumstances. So, create means setting the baseline standards for your day, your client interactions, and your boundaries before the world even gets a vote.
I love that, before the world gets a vote. Okay, moving to A, which stands for align. And I have to admit, when I read this, alignment usually sounds like corporate buzzword bingo to me.
Oh, completely. It sounds very HR.
Yeah. So what does alignment actually look like in practice here?
In this blueprint, it looks like a harsh audit of your calendar and your bank account. Alignment is bringing your stated values, your daily actions, and your relationships into strict coherence.
So matching what you say with what you do.
Exactly. If you say your priority is deep, strategic client relationships, but your calendar shows you spending 40 hours a week doing low-level administrative data entry, you are out of alignment.
Right.
Closing that gap removes the massive energy costs of trying to be two different people.
Because it's exhausting to live in that contradiction.
It really is.
Okay, so next is L for lead. But the material specifies this is about regulating yourself before leading others.
Yeah, think about the frantic manager who sends panic emails at like 2:00 a.m. because they're anxious about a deadline.
Oh, we've all had that boss.
Right. They are dysregulated, and they're basically broadcasting that dysregulation right into their entire team's nervous system.
Wow, broadcasting dysregulation. That's a great way to put it.
You simply cannot lead clients through volatile market or lead a team through a difficult quarter if your own internal state is chaotic. Leadership here is an inside-out mechanism. You secure your own oxygen mask first, regulate your own anxiety, and then you step into the room to direct others.
That makes total sense. And finally, we have M for mastery, and the caveat here is critical. They say mastery is not perfection.
Because perfection is a paralyzing standard. Nobody is perfect. Mastery in this architecture is just the long, quiet practice of incremental improvement. It's a sustained commitment to doing the reps, studying your own tape, and just getting slightly better over a decade.
You know, the big takeaway from this section really redefines the word for me. There's this line, calm is not the absence of pressure, it's the presence of foundation.
That's such a powerful distinction.
It really is, because we tend to associate calm with, like, sitting quietly on a beach, totally isolated from stress. But in the context of building a business, calm means you've driven your pylons deep enough into the bedrock that when a Category 5 storm hits your industry, your building sways, but it doesn't snap.
Exactly. And that foundation is the only way to survive the transition into the actual mechanics of the business, which is the next major phase of the material. So once your identity is secure and your calm is established, you're finally ready to engage with the core operating system.
Which brings us to the big work blueprint itself. And just to give you, the listener, a sense of the sheer gravity of this system, the sources outline an architecture containing 5 pillars, 20 frameworks, and 80 segments.
It is a massive, comprehensive engine.
80 segments, that's huge.
It is. But a business is an ecosystem, so the operating system has to cover every variable. Let's look at how the pillars weave together. Pillar US is foundation.
Okay.
This takes the internal identity work we just discussed and translates it into market-facing language. So you're defining your personal and professional unique value propositions, your UVP, and setting your annual strategic actions. You're figuring out what is true about you, validating it against the reality of the market, and positioning it clearly.
So you know who you are and what you offer. Then you hit pillar second, which is capacity. And this section focuses heavily on managing how much you can actually hold without breaking and how you recover.
Yeah,
They introduce a concept called mind settled, which is distinguishing between stress and signal. Can you unpack that?
sure. Mind Settled is essentially an internal triage system. Every single day, a business owner faces dozens of fires. Now, stress is the physiological panic response to all of them.
Right, the heart racing, the sweat.
Exactly. But a signal is objective data telling you that something in your system is actually broken. Pillar 2 teaches you to separate the noise of doing business from the signals that actually require intervention.
That's so crucial.
And it also focuses heavily on establishing rigid boundaries. Because think about it, a brilliant pillar I value proposition is totally useless if you were just too exhausted to deliver it.
That is so true. Okay, so you have the foundation, you've protected your capacity. Pillar third is expression. This covers visibility, clear messaging, and a philosophy called marketing as communication.
Right, which means rather than chasing clients with aggressive sales pitches, you lead with education. You teach the market how to think about their problems.
Okay, now I need to call a hard time out right here.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because we need to talk about pillar the fourth, infrastructure.
Yeah.
This covers your tech stack, your CRM, which is your customer relationship management software for anyone unfamiliar, your automated workflows, basically all the digital plumbing.
The tools.
Right. And putting tech fourth in this sequence feels incredibly risky to me. I mean, if my billing software crashes, I don't eat. If my CRM deletes my client notes, I lose accounts today. Most struggling professionals I know immediately try to fix their business by upgrading their infrastructure.
They do. All the time.
So how can this blueprint possibly justify ignoring the tools that keep the lights on until step 4?
I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it is actually the most protective structural choice in the entire blueprint.
Really?
Yes. When a business is struggling, the owner's instinct is to buy a solution. They think, oh, if I just buy this expensive new CRM or subscribe to this crazy new AI automation tool, my business will be fixed. But technology is completely agnostic. It only amplifies what is already there.
Oh, so if your foundation is cracked.
Exactly. If your identity is muddy, if your capacity is already shot, and your messaging in pillar the third is confusing. Plugging a state-of-the-art tech stack into that mess is just going to automate your confusion.
Wow. Automating your confusion?
You'll just be sending out confusing, off-brand messages at scale.
Yeah.
You have to know precisely who you are, what volume of work you can safely handle, and what you are actually trying to say to the market before you can possibly evaluate what digital tools you need to say it.
That makes so much sense.
The blueprint actually calls jumping straight to tech tool overload.
Automating your confusion. That is a brutal realization, but it makes total sense. Buying a faster treadmill won't help if you're running in the wrong direction.
Perfectly said.
So you lock down the first 3 pillars, you build the appropriate tech in 4, and that leaves pillar V, integration.
Right. Integration is the connective tissue. It establishes the weekly, quarterly, and annual rhythms of your business. It's where you build decision filters so you know immediately what opportunities to say yes to and which to decline.
Because without pillar V,
Without pillar V, the first 4 pillars are just a binder full of good ideas sitting on a shelf. Integration is how the system actually breathes.
I love that. I want to pull a thread from pillar the third really quick, expression, and examine it more closely. Because the sources argue that the most effective way to communicate your identity to the market isn't through, bullet points on a slide. It's through structured storytelling.
Yes, storytelling is huge here.
But let's be honest, business storytelling is a minefield.
Well, it's the worst sometimes.
9 times out of 10, it just turns into a professional writing a self-indulgent humble brag on LinkedIn about what their morning coffee taught them about B2B sales.
We've all seen those posts.
Right. So how do we tell stories that drive actual business without just feeding our own egos?
Well, the blueprint offers a very specific structural antidote to the humble brag, and it's called the TAN Story Lab Framework. And what's fascinating here is that it mirrors the exact CALM acronym we discussed for personal identity, but it applies it to narrative.
Oh, wait, the exact same acronym?
Yeah. Yep. Create, align, lead, master.
Yeah.
But it treats a story as a highly engineered mechanism for transferring an idea.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that. The first stage is create.
Right. In storytelling, create means setting the scene with absolute precision. You have to ground the audience immediately in the when and the where, so they aren't spending the first 30 seconds of your story trying to orient themselves.
That makes sense. Next is align, which the framework defines as setting the emotion.
Because stories don't connect through logic, they connect through shared emotional states. Before you even start speaking, you have to decide what emotional journey you are engineering for the listener. Are you trying to move them from a state of frustration to a state of hope?
Right.
From confusion to clarity? If you don't know the emotional trajectory, you're not telling a story, you're just listing events.
Then you hit lead. This is about clarifying the takeaway. The purpose of a story in this context isn't to prove how smart you are, it's to teach the listener something useful.
Exactly. And finally, Master, this is choosing the action. Because a business story without a call to action is just entertainment. It should end with a specific, tangible action the listener can take within the next 10 minutes to improve their own situation.
There's a guiding principle in this framework that I think is fundamental to all good writing. Conflict creates connection. But the blueprint asks the professional to make a very specific distinction between external conflict and internal conflict.
Right, so external conflict is the logistical roadblock. The market crashed, a key employee quit, the software failed. That's the plot.
The stuff that happens to you.
Exactly. But the internal conflict is the psychology. What limiting belief, what hidden fear, or what piece of your own ego did you have to confront and actually dismantle in order to navigate that external problem?
Oh, that's good.
Because if you only talk about external conflict, you just sound like a victim of circumstance. When you expose the internal conflict, you become relatable, human, and trustworthy.
I want to try out a visual metaphor for this. Let's say you try to tell a story without any structure. It's basically like a vine growing wildly along the ground.
Okay, a vine.
Yeah, it spreads everywhere, it takes up a massive amount of energy and space, but it achieves absolutely zero height. Can't see it from a distance, it's just a mess of leaves on the floor.
Right.
The TEEIN framework acts as a trellis. It provides a rigid, unyielding structure. And because that structure is there, the narrative vine has something to grip. It can actually climb upward, achieve height, and be seen by the people who need to see it.
That trellis metaphor perfectly illustrates a key quote from the source material, actually. They say, to scale, you remove limitations and implement structure. In storytelling, structure is the freedom to speak with power.
Structure is freedom.
Yes. The rigidity of the framework doesn't trap your creativity, it focuses it. And to help professionals actually build this trellis, the blueprint challenges them to a 3-week story sprint.
Right, I saw this. Week 1 is telling a story about a beginning. Week 2 is a story about a failure that transformed into an insight. And week 3 is detailing a client transformation.
And notice what is missing from that list. At no point are you asked to tell a story about the features of your new financial product.
Not once.
You're using human vulnerability and structural rigor to deliver a business lesson.
So we've explored the philosophical foundation, the 5 pillars of the operating system, and the trellis of storytelling. But a brilliant conceptual system is totally worthless if it doesn't generate real-world momentum.
Theory is great, but execution is what keeps the business alive.
Exactly. Which is why the material pivots to the application path, detailing what is called the impact blueprint. This maps out the exact sequence of how impact compounds when a professional actually runs this system in the wild.
It's a 5-step cascade. First, client relationships deepen because you're leading with a regulated, authentic identity rather than just a sales pitch. Second, because that trust is so deep, referrals become a natural byproduct rather than an awkward favor you have to beg for.
Oh, nobody likes begging for referrals.
Nobody. Third, your capacity stabilizes. You aren't taking on mismatched clients who drain your energy. Fourth, the practice as a whole begins to lead with presence. And finally, the person and the practice mature together organically.
And that maturity leads to the ultimate destination of the entire architecture, a state the blueprint calls the onboarded advisor. And this isn't certification you hang on your wall. It's the lived, embodied result of doing the internal and external work. It's broken down into 6 distinct stages.
Let's run through them. Stage 1 is know yourself. You've identified the underlying beliefs required to be a trusted practitioner.
Stage 2 is define your UVP. You can articulate how you think and how you solve problems without hiding behind industry jargon.
And then stage 3?
Yes, I really want to focus on stage 3, which is set 3 annual non-negotiables across the 5 pillars. I want to step out of the material for a second and just ask you, the listener, to think about your current workflow right now. What are your 3 absolute non-negotiables this year? What are the boundaries you simply will not compromise on?
That's a tough question for a lot of people.
It is, whether that's refusing to work with clients who disrespect your team or protecting your Friday afternoons for deep strategic thinking, you have to decide.
Establishing those non-negotiables is really an exercise in subtraction, which links directly back to pillar the second and protecting your capacity.
Right.
Most professionals view growth as constantly adding more to their plate. I'll just do more, more, more. But growth at this level is about fiercely deciding what you will not do. If you do not rigidly define your non-negotiables, the market will gladly define them for you. And trust me, the market has zero interest in preventing your burnout.
The market will consume whatever you are willing to give it. Okay, moving to stage 4. The professional must build a compliance-aligned client journey. Let's decode that jargon because in industries like financial advising or healthcare, compliance is massive. You can't just speak your truth if your truth violates federal regulations.
No, you definitely cannot. This stage is where authenticity meets the regulatory reality of your industry. A compliance-aligned journey means you've designed a client experience that feels entirely unique to your identity, but is fully defensible, documented, and operates strictly within the legal bounds of your profession.
So it's a balance.
Right. You don't sacrifice compliance for personality, and you don't use compliance as an excuse to be boring. You engineer a process that satisfies both.
Stage 5 is practice real-world scripts. You actually rehearse the difficult frontline conversations so you have fluency when a client is panicking. And stage 6 is reflect and grow. You build in structured time to analyze your performance and integrate the lessons.
Now, if anyone is listening to this and wondering if this is all just an ivory tower thought experiment, the credibility backing this up is immense. Kim Skirmer has logged over 25,000 professional coaching hours.
25,000 hours? That's
With
wild.
more than a decade of sitting in rooms analyzing the behavioral patterns and business structures of high-performing professionals. She has pressure-tested these frameworks across thousands of friction points.
And she actively runs 5 distinct business divisions using this exact operating system. She manages her coaching method, she hosts a podcast called Wisdom in the Whispers, and she operates a philanthropic arm called the Community Well, which donates 5% of all profits to high-risk youth.
It's total proof of concept.
It really is. You do not have to sacrifice your humanity, your health, or your community impact to run a highly structured, fiercely profitable business.
The architecture suggests the exact opposite, actually. Your humanity isn't a liability to your business structure. It is the only viable foundation for it.
Let's pull the camera all the way back and look at the terrain we've covered today. We started by identifying the competence trap, the exhaustion of wearing the theatrical costume of professional performance.
We explored the mechanics of finding the eye, treating lived experience as hard data.
We crossed the bridge of calm to regulate ourselves before we lead. We debated the specific sequence of the 5 pillars, establishing why identity and capacity must absolutely precede the purchase of new tech infrastructure.
We built a trellis for our business narratives using the tap-in storytelling framework, leveraging internal conflict to create genuine connection.
And we followed the compounding impact of those systems all the way to the maturity of the onboarded advisor. The ultimate revelation of the big work blueprint is that if you want to scale without losing your mind, you have to stop competing on product.
Because whatever product or service you offer, someone else can offer it slightly cheaper or slightly faster.
Always, you have to transition to leading with your presence.
Because your presence, your specific synthesized history of failures, insights, and superpowers is the only asset in your entire portfolio that cannot be commoditized by the market.
Which brings us to a final thought I want to leave you with as we wrap up this deep dive. We just spent a lot of time talking about the 5 pillars, specifically expression and infrastructure.
Right.
Consider the speed at which artificial intelligence is currently moving.
Yeah.
We are entering a reality where AI can flawlessly write your marketing copy, optimize your messaging, manage your CRM, and automate your entire operational infrastructure.
It's already happening.
It is. If the technology can perfectly replicate everything in Pillar the Third and Pillar Fourth, what happens to your value in the marketplace? When the tools of execution are entirely democratized and available to everyone for a few dollars a month, the only differentiator left standing will be the very thing we started discussing today: your uncommoditized, unreplicable I.
When the machines can do the heavy lifting of the business, your humanity becomes your premium offering. It is definitely something to prepare for.
It's the ultimate pivot. Thanks for taking this deep dive with